Hey there, and welcome to the Joy of Creation story mode by Nixon. A story breakdown for this game has been suggested by a few people since the last one, and I figured I'd cover the original game instead of just waiting for the remake, in case the remake story changes drastically. Definitely a bit overdue, but let's get into it. And as always, spoilers ahead. Our first stop, our old family home.
Really haven't changed one bit, have you? Wow. Tobias.
Hey Nick, the house. It's yours.
Finally, after so long. Thanks, man. It's been years, decades at least, since I've been inside this house. I lived here when I was just a kid, with my family. My mom, my siblings, my dad. I received a call from Tobias telling me that they were finally ready with the repairs this morning. Took them long enough. It's funny. Even after what happened, and all that time away from home, it looks just like I remembered it to be. Is my memory that precise? Of course, things like the furniture and photos aren't here anymore, but hey, can't blame anybody for that. Right. I guess I better use that memory for something useful. I don't have the full story, nor do I know why it happened, but I can tell you how it started. Everything else is up to you to figure out. This is the story of the night I lost my home, my childhood, and almost my family. When Five Nights at Freddy's just ended.
The story of how Five Nights at Freddy's ended is broken up into multiple memories. Now, each of these memories mainly have different gameplay elements, but more importantly, they each covered part of the story from a different family member's perspective. And so our first memory takes place in the bedroom.
Where was he? What did you see?
Hello? What are you doing in our house?
Dad, is the stranger okay?
Yes, he's okay. Don't worry. He just seems confused. Excuse me, sir. Can you tell me your name? Look, man, if you won't talk, I'm calling the police. You can't just barge into someone's house like this. Are you hurt? Do you need any help?
Honey, what's going on?
I don't know. This man suddenly appears in our house. They thought it was a baby, but I don't know. Then here or
Michael! What? I mean, my name. It's Michael. I'm Michael. You asked me that before.
Daddy, Michael kind of sounds like you.
Excuse me, just what are you doing in our house? The sun's about to go down. I don't think you should be here.
Yeah, I was just saying that. You look a little bit roughed up. What happened to you? I don't know. I can't remember. I'm sorry, but I just don't know.
Michael should get up. The floor is bad. Daddy, can we help Michael? Nighttime is coming and it would be bad to leave him outside.
I guess. Can you stand? I think so. A bit. I just feel a bit, dizzy. Yes, dizzy. Come on, man. Let me help you up.
After that, Dad carried the stranger to our guest room. He thanked me for convincing my parents to let him rest in our house for a night, or at least while he collected his thoughts. After that, Mom put me in bed. I can't remember much about Michael, but I knew he wasn't a bad person, or at least he didn't look, dangerous. I was young, so I guess I just didn't know any better. Certainly didn't know what a burglar was, that's for sure. Not that I was implying he was. I never talked to him again after that. Well, except for when the storm happened. That's when I woke up on my bed, and I saw them.
You may not know it yet, but that man's responsible for everything that happens later on.
Hello, Nick? Hey, little Nicky, it's me, Michael. And hey, don't say anything back to me, okay? There are monsters around that'll hear you if you do. Now, don't be scared, Nick, okay? Listen to me, and we can defeat those monsters, all right? Okay, so these monsters might look, surreal. Don't look at them too long, or you'll feel weird and see creepy things. When you do, turn on your desk lamp next to your bed. You'll feel safe there.
Michael then goes on to explain all of the different characters' mechanics: Freddy, Chica, Bonnie, and Foxy. For the most part, what you need to know is that at 6 a.m., that's when you'll know you're safe. Now you might be wondering, how does Michael know about how these creatures work? Why do they resemble the characters from your father's game? All questions that will be answered in time. At the end of each memory, you'll get a newspaper clipping like this, and after the bedroom memory, you get a newspaper clipping commemorating the 2nd anniversary of Five Nights at Freddy's. Normally, for these story breakdown videos, I don't use, or I try not to rely on quote-unquote outside information, which technically this would be, you know, like knowing what Five Nights at Freddy's is, what are the characters, etc, etc. But this game is made with the assumption that the player knows what Five Nights at Freddy's is, so I'm not gonna go and like say like, oh, what is Five Nights at Freddy's, what is Bonnie, Freddy, all that. We're gonna work on the assumption that you know what FNAF is. I just want to make that clear, since I usually state, you know, with all these videos, that I don't rely on outside information as much as possible. And so with that said, we move on to the next memory, the living room.
Do you really think it was a good idea letting him stay?
Well, it's not like he was in any condition to do anything. Did you see his clothes? It's like he came out of a bonfire.
I mean, I could have, called an ambulance, maybe dropped him off near a hospital would have been better. I just don't think I feel comfortable with a complete stranger just ending up sleeping in our house is all.
Oh, honey, are you worried about the kids?
Of course I'm worried about the kids. He's sleeping right next to them. How can I not be? What if he's faking, Val?
We could stay here to make sure nothing happens, if you're that worried.
All night?
Of course, all night. Come on, don't you want to spend time with me more? You are done updating your site for the anniversary. How about we just sit here in the living room and watch some TV while we keep an eye on the kids?
I mean, sure, I guess. Yeah, I guess we could do that. I've just got to go make sure one more time nothing's wrong, all right? I'll be right back.
Okay, I'll just stay right here. But don't take too long. You worry too much. What was that?
Unfortunately for them, keeping Michael in their home is one of the worst mistakes they'll ever make.
Hello? Is someone there? If anyone can hear me, please respond immediately.
Who is it? What in God's name is going on here?
It's me, Michael. Look, there's no time to explain. Just know that you are in grave danger. Is Scott there with you?
My husband? No, he isn't. He just went to... What do you mean I'm in danger?
Ma'am, I am very, very sorry. This is all my fault. You need to stay calm. I'll try to help you through this. Just please listen to me very carefully.
What?
Listen, there are monsters that are going to arrive to your room real soon. If they see you, you are dead. Do you understand that, ma'am? It is very important that whatever occurs, just don't let them see you.
Do I have to stay here all night? What about my children? What about my husband?
Look, it's very hard to explain, ma'am, and no, just wait until 6 a.m. to be safe. But don't worry, the time will pass much faster. Just keep an eye on the clock and wait for that time. They should all be gone in a few minutes, and then the hours will reset. Now, please, if you survive, I need you to grab your kids and get out of this house as soon as possible. I'm gonna help Scott get out of here myself. Don't worry, just please get yourself and your sons out of harm's way.
I don't understand. What is even happening? How do you know all of this stuff? Wait a second. How do you know my husband's name? I was there when he found you, Michael. He never said his name. How do you know? Michael?
So now Val finds herself in a similar situation to her son, Nick, where she has to now fend off against these monsters. And luckily for her, Michael knows exactly how to do that. Now, this memory in question brings a lot of new information to light. For one, Michael says that it's all his fault that this is happening, suggesting that he's somehow responsible for the monster's appearance in their home. That definitely seems to be a lot more believable considering the intimate knowledge he has about how these monsters work. Let's not forget that he somehow knows Scott's name even though they never told Michael his name, which is definitely suspicious, and considering that he showed up out of nowhere, it's his fault the animatronics are here, maybe he's actually here for a reason and it's not all just some big mistake. Not only that, but it's also interesting that he says that the hours will reset after a few minutes once it hits 6 a.m., which is a very odd detail for sure. A detail that doesn't even make sense yet. And so of course Val survives the night, with another newspaper clipping showing up about haunted woods and increased paranormal sightings. Perhaps this is connected with the monsters that resemble a lot like the Five Nights at Freddy's characters. But now, it is time to move on to Scott Cawthon in the office.
For years, I've thought that what I saw was just a bad dream. Something that couldn't possibly have been real. Why would it? Monstrous beings coming to get a helpless child from the shadows, poking their heads out from under the bed, peeking through the closet. Just a usual nightmare for a kid, right? No matter how real it felt. Well, most of what came after is foggy. Felt more like a dream than the actual nightmare itself. Mom came to rescue me. Picked me up and carried me away. I was scared for my life. It was the scariest moment of my life, for sure. I've never been a crybaby, though. Even when I was a kid, people have told me they've never seen me cry, or yell, or even scream. So even if I was terrified during all of it, I would have been silent the entire time. But that was the strangest thing about that night. Even though I never made a peep, as I was being taken outside by my mother, away from the nightmare, I still vividly remember hearing my own screams.
So now we know that at the very least, Nick and his mom survived that night. Of course, it makes sense that Nick doesn't really remember what happened because, of course, he was a kid at the time. That's why he's back here, trying to remember what happened. Maybe seeing Scott's side of the story will help shed some light on things.
Nick? Nick? Fuck.
What is happening?
This isn't real. This isn't real. I'm just dreaming. None of this is real. Ah! God. Freddy? Freddy. What are you doing? What are you, Freddy? No! Oh God! No. What is this? Help! Somebody help! Mel? Nick? Anthony, Sam, where are you? What is going on? What is this?
monsters are around the house. Here's your trusty flashlight to slay them with. We hide from the monsters. They were mean to Mommy. So we hid where you always tell us to hide. Much love, Nick, Sam, and Anthony. All right. It has been, I don't know, hours, days. I don't think it matters here anymore. All the clocks in the house have stopped. I don't even think the sun is ever coming up. I'm not crazy. Whatever has brought them here must have done this too. I don't know how much time has passed. I've left these messages for myself too. Help me remember what they do, how they act. I mean, they all want to get inside, but Freddy, he's here. I can see him. He's not like the others. He just stands there. He knows he can't get to me. He's just waiting. I don't fully understand, but I know he isn't giving up. If I want to get out of here, I need to find him. I just know it. He's the key to this. God, I can't stay put here. I need to fight for my family. Oh, God, they must be so scared. He's gone. He's gone. Okay. I have a flashlight ready with me. This might be suicide, but I need to try. If I see Freddy again, I'll just open up the door and flash his eyes as soon as he's there. Yes, I can't let him hold me down like this forever. I just hope this works out. If it doesn't, then
Alright, so there's a lot to talk about. Two things in particular, the time loop and the time freeze. It's already clear that the time loop is happening all throughout the house, because Nick and Val seems to be dealing with it. At least because Val has to deal with the hours resetting. I'm assuming that Nick has to as well. Now, I think this is because since these characters are from the game Five Nights at Freddy's, which runs from 12 to 6 a.m. at night, it seems like these characters, these monsters, have brought the rules of the game Five Nights at Freddy's into the real world. That's my best theory on it. And as for the time freeze, well, flashing Freddy seems to distort the effect of the time freeze, suggesting that Freddy's the one that's freezing time in the first place, right? Which is why he doesn't attack Scott at all throughout the main night, unless, you know, you get to 6 a.m. without getting to Freddy enough times. As for why Freddy doesn't move, I'll argue that he's incapable of moving while freezing time itself. Of course, now we also have to consider, why is this happening to Scott? Taking into consideration that Michael knows Scott's name, right? He happens to be here in this house along with the monsters and has said so himself that it's his fault the monsters are here in the first place, or, you know, that all this is happening as he actually puts it. It makes it seem as though Michael and the monsters are targeting Scott specifically. Maybe this has something to do with the fact that these monsters are, you know, lookalikes of Scott's creations. So that might be the link that is causing them to go after Scott specifically. As mentioned previously, the only way you get to progress through the memory is by flashing Freddy. And if you manage to do that enough times, you'll get to 6 a.m., allowing you to get a moment of reprieve and escape the office. With that, we get another newspaper clipping announcing the cancellation of the newest FNAF game. Quite the surprise. Maybe you just can't stand to make any more FNAF games after what happened that night. And so up next, we head to the basement in search of our children. Hopefully they're safe.
Do you believe in spirits? Many do. Many claim they've seen one or have heard stories of people being haunted by these white figures, or oily shadows. My dad made a game series about it. A horror franchise, in fact. It was his shining achievement. Apparently there was a time when everybody knew about it, all over the world. Clothing, toys, accessories, board games, you name it. Five Nights at Freddy's was everywhere. There were even rumors of it getting a movie. Well, it didn't last long anyway. Nobody remembers it anymore, nor the characters, the games, or my father. After that night, it all went away. Nothing lasts forever, and that's why I don't believe in spirits. Everyone has to die. Everything has an end at some point. Even if that point comes sooner than you'd wish.
It's hard to believe that we're in a reality in this world, right, where FNAF has fallen into obscurity. And not even just the games, right, even the creator himself has pretty much been forgotten, despite its incredible popularity back when the games were being made. However, at this point in time, Nick reflects on spirits and whether he believes in them. And despite what he believes, clearly there's still something at that house. The question is, will he be able to make it out safely?
Hello? Kids? Are any of you there? I found your note. Daddy's here. You must be really scared, but I'm here. Why are you doing this to us? Why? Just leave us all alone, you monsters! I created you. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy. How is this happening? What are you? You are not them. You're just using their faces. What are you?
Your creation. I'm sorry.
After being knocked out by what sounds like Michael, you wake up. But what if I told you this isn't Scott? You wake up in what looks like the basement, but it's a lot more like an escape room, with messages on the monitors and endoskeletons that are out to get you. The Fallen. Not only that, but these messages come from Golden Freddy, a character that we haven't really talked about pretty much in the entire game, but that's one character that we'll get to later on. Throughout the entire memory, you get a series of messages from the monitors, and together they state, "You are awake. You exist to let us out. Let us out, open the way, or burn with the rest of them. We come from the fire, but our bodies need shape. Bring his creations to us to ignite our flame. Many shapes, all similar but different, all keeping us in here with you, the one he calls Michael in the stories he formed. Find the key to fit the lock. Avoid the ones lost to the fire. Give him to us and we promise his kindred to fill your desires. We act, we pose, we play, we stop, we stare, we scream. We bring his visions to life, because that is how we live, feeding from the joy of creation and burning what remains." So, I think it's no surprise at this point now that the animatronics, the Five Nights at Freddy's characters that you are trying to fight against throughout the entirety of the game are not just the characters come to life. Even Scott picked up on this before he was knocked out. So of course that begs the question, what are they? And they're simply put spirits that have gained the form of these Five Nights at Freddy's characters and used those forms to manifest into the real world. This pretty much explains the origin of the monsters, as well as Michael, who is simply another one of Scott's characters. So now that begs the question, how do they get into the real world anyway? According to Golden Freddy, they were able to feed from Scott's creations, giving them physical form in the real world. In fact, this entire memory is showing how those spirits gained the forms of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. In Michael's second trial, we literally see Michael feeding into the furnace a hook, a bass guitar, a cupcake, and a top hat, all items representing the different characters. And what does Golden Freddy say right in that trial? We come from the fire, but our bodies need shape. Bring his creations to us to ignite our flame. So essentially, Michael is taking these objects and feeding them to the fire, where the spirits originate, and the spirits are then able to use those items to gain the physical form that those items represent. Now, considering that the game seems to suggest that these spirits came from some sort of fiery realm or whatnot, it would help explain why they all have this kind of burnt appearance including Michael, according to what Val says, saying that Michael looked like he had just come from a bonfire. So that explains the origins of Michael and the spirits. But what about the endoskeletons? According to Golden Freddy and the game itself, if you end up dying to one of them, they are referred to as the Fallen, spirits that were lost to the fire. And I believe specifically this means that while these spirits were able to gain some sort of physical form, at least, in terms of appearance, right? They look like the endoskeletons that Scott created. They aren't able to go into the physical world like the creations are able to. Now, the only two characters that we haven't really talked about in depth are Michael and Golden Freddy. With regards to Golden Freddy, there's a lot that we don't really know about him. He somehow has all this knowledge on the Fallen and helps Michael bring the creations to life, but we don't know much about Golden Freddy himself. So we'll leave a pin in that for now. But with regards to Michael, despite the fact that we see him helping the creations get their physical form and come to life, we never see that being done for Michael. Or at least that's what you might think if you haven't seen this death scene. It literally depicts someone in the furnace looking at the Fallen outside of the furnace, right? Supposedly in the basement. And I think this is meant to represent Michael in the furnace, either his origins, right? Maybe this is before the basement memory in general, or maybe this is how he got into the real world, which would explain his burnt appearance. Not only that, but we also get an idea as to why Michael is doing all this, because according to Golden Freddy, there seems to be a promise between Michael and the creations. If Michael delivers Scott to the creations, Michael's desires will be fulfilled by Scott's kindred, his family. What does this mean? I think we should let Michael explain this one. After escaping the Fallen and helping the creations, we get another newspaper clipping about doppelgangers, which seems to be very related to what the creations are, right? Because they're essentially doppelgangers of the game characters that Scott created. And so of course now, our final memory takes place in the attic. This is where it all ends.
You've prolonged this for too long, Scott. They're barely holding themselves together anymore.
Why? I have been a good man. We've been good people. Why have you demons come to torture me and my family?
I was saying that we've gone.
Stop ignoring my questions! If I'm going to die, at least I want to know why! Can you at least give me that?
Look, I'm sorry. It's just the way things have to go. It's just a part of life. But for us, I mean, their bodies are hardly keeping themselves together, so they've gathered themselves in the basement. They can't just kill you directly, and I promised them I'd leave you to them. So I brought you here to at least try to talk to you before they arrive. So before they get here and everything burns, I'd like to thank you for giving us this opportunity to see the world through the eyes of your creations. Being Michael Schmidt has been an incredible experience. I mean, I feel fantastic. I want to keep feeling like this forever. And to do that, I need you to die.
Leave us alone! No!
The attic, where your final stand against creation begins. And this time, Golden Freddy's here to join the fun. But first, we have to talk about Michael. We finally learn after all this time what his motivations were for pretty much everything that's happened in the game. And to put it simply, Michael wants to become human. However, he can't really do that without Scott's death, similar to how the creations need Scott dead in order to stay in this world. Yet, despite Michael wanting this, right, he feels sort of bittersweet at the same time about having to kill Scott, because obviously Scott's the reason why Michael and the creations came to exist in the first place. Even Michael says this himself. Scott gave them the opportunity to see the world through the eyes of his creations. Scott enabled them to get this far, and now he has to pay the ultimate price in order for Michael and the creations to stay in this world. The thing about Michael is that he's always been a more interesting character compared to the other creations, because we know that the creations obviously want to live right in this world, but Michael, we actually get to hear his desires, how he pretty much loves the feeling of being human, right? And this ties into the promise that he made with the creations, right? Where the creations say that if Michael delivers Scott to them, Scott's family will fill Michael's desires, and that has to do with Michael being human. Now, what does this mean? It means that Michael essentially wants to become Scott, to have a part in Scott's family, essentially. Though, it's not clear how Michael plans to achieve this. Now, in order to survive your last encounter with the creations, you need to keep creation as far away from the attic as possible, while continuously trying to find Golden Freddy and flash him on the cameras. However, they're not the only ones trying to kill you, for the Fallen have returned. Or at least that's what it seems like. We have two endoskeletons that come from the hallways behind you, and while they do resemble the Fallen, there's no guarantee that they are actually the same spirits that tried to kill Michael back during the basement memory. My personal theory on this is that these are two spirits that have taken the form of the endoskeletons and have actually succeeded in moving into the real world, like the creations, like Michael, and they're pretty much just trying to do what everyone else is trying to do, right? They're trying to kill Scott so that they can stay in this world. Speaking of killing Scott, that moves us to the most confusing part of this memory, when Michael tells Scott that the creations apparently can't directly kill Scott, which is very weird. Now, I've racked my brain trying to explain all this, so I'm going to try and pretty much give my best headcanon on why this is the case. My main argument is that the spirits can't kill Scott because Scott's characters, the energy that Scott put into his creations, is literally what the spirits fed off of. And maybe that links the spirits to Scott in some way that prevents the spirits from killing Scott. That's my best way of putting it. Otherwise, I would have to talk about time manipulation, which I think is way too far-fetched to really be a good way to explain why the spirits can't kill Scott, or that's how they plan on killing Scott. Very confusing. I will simply put it up to supernatural hijinks, okay? Now, you might be asking at that point, if that's the case, then why are they attacking Scott? And my argument to that is that, a lot like the time loop and the time freeze, the spirits are acting a lot like the characters do in the Five Nights at Freddy's games. When you think about it, a lot of the environment in these memories are similar to Five Nights at Freddy's, right? You have a night between 12 to 6 a.m. This applies to Nick, to Val, to Scott. As the night goes on, the night gets harder. And of course, once it's 6 a.m., the creations disappear, just like your night ends in Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, I think this explains why the creations go after not just Scott, but Nick and Val, because they are pretty much following this script from the games. Even though it doesn't have the same gameplay and all that, they're still doing what their characters normally do in the games. They go after a certain character. And I think this explains why they go after all these other characters, right, Nick and Val, even though they were never the main target to begin with. So that's pretty much my 2 cents on this phrasing, right, that the spirits can't directly kill Scott. But if that's the case, then why does Michael bother bringing Scott to the creations? I have no clue. It's a part that's not really properly explained. So now we've covered all of the main details. All that's left now is for you to pretty much weaken Golden Freddy until you get to survive. Over time, as you continue to hold creation back and flash Golden Freddy, the fire starts spreading in the house, all the way up to the attic. At the same time, Golden Freddy's plushie on the table, which has been sitting there since the beginning of the memory, starts fading slowly out of existence. Or rather, glitching out of existence. And of course, we can't forget, once you do survive, you get one more newspaper talking about a man who's found dead in his own home, which was recently repaired. Sounds a lot like Nick.
Sam, Anthony, Beck, where are you?
You really love your family, don't you? You can die here, you know? Survive the night, just wait for 6 a.m. and it will all be over. That's how it worked there before, right? But these are not your things. This night won't go away until you've been consumed by the fire.
What about them? If I have to go, then you at least promise me they'll be safe. Promise me that you won't harm them. Please.
Mommy, Daddy's coming out of the house.
Honey?
Val, I'm here!
Daddy!
Oh, hon, I was so worried.
It's okay, Val. It's okay. We're safe now. Have you called 911?
Yes, I did. As soon as we got out, I called them, like, a few hours ago. They said they'll be here as soon as they could. Oh, God, we stayed inside there for so long. I thought you...
But I didn't. Don't worry. Everybody is fine.
Daddy, what happened to home? Why is it burning? Is Michael still in there?
We are safe, Nick. Matters. You're safe now.
Dad?
What do we do now? Everything's gone.
You are safe now. It's all that matters.
Dad, you're acting weird.
You are safe now. That's all that matters.
Honey, are you okay?
You are safe now. That's all that matters.
Daddy, no!
You are
Oh my
safe.
God, oh my God!
That's all that matters. You are safe. That's all that matters. You are safe now. That's all that matters. You are safe now. That's all that matters. See? They're safe now. Just as you wanted. Thank you for your cooperation, Scott Coughlin. I'll take care of everything from here.
And so we leave with a somber end to the joy of creation. Scott gave up his life to Michael in exchange for his family's safety. Of course, luckily, the family got out, and they eventually realized that Scott was not the same person anymore. So, who knows what happens after that? This is all being remembered through Old Nick, as the credits show. This is all a memory. Who knows what becomes of the family? What happens to Michael, quote-unquote, Scott, right? What happened to the creations? Did they finally perish? Or do they get to live now that Scott's dead? What about Golden Freddy, who seems to have a bit of a different kind of treatment compared to the creations? This story always showed Golden Freddy as a more superior spirit in comparison to the creations. They kind of highlight that a little bit through the basement memory. But it leaves you wondering, what about those characters? What happens to them? I'll be honest, this has been quite the stressful story breakdown to do, because trying to get around the logic of why the creations couldn't kill Scott. It had me going for a while, trying to break down why the time loop exists in this game, why Freddy can freeze time, is kind of confusing, but obviously, as I've mentioned before, I've kind of nailed it to being more of like an analogy when it comes to the Five Nights at Freddy's games. As the spirits take the form of the Freddy, Five Nights at Freddy's characters, the game ends up going with the spirits into the real world. That's how I have managed to understand it from my point of view. Maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't. But that, alas, is my interpretation on the main story of what happened on the night that Five Nights at Freddy's ended. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, what about what happens with Michael, right? How did Michael kill Scott? And to that I say, for one, did Michael kill Scott? I mean, really kill Scott? Because he's still in Scott's body, right? There's no guarantee that he really killed Scott. For all we know, he just took control of Scott. And, when Scott said that he gave up his life, maybe it's more like he gave up control of his life, right? And handed over to Michael. So maybe, this is how Michael got around the whole, you can't kill Scott, directly. But as I already mentioned, that part's already very weird to try and argue with. So I think that's what happened. Maybe it's not a case of killing Scott, but more like possessing Scott to some degree. But we can't forget about one character, Nick. Remember, this is all, parts of the memories that he was trying to remember, right? This was him trying to remember what happened that night. But what happens to Nick? After all, at the very end, we get that newspaper clipping saying that a man was found dead in their renovated country home. That sounds like Nick. Will we ever get resolution to that? Well, we do. And would you believe it if I told you it all has to do with Golden Freddy? Now you might be wondering, how's that the case, right? Because Golden Freddy doesn't really have a huge presence in this game, you might be saying, right? We know Golden Freddy talks to Michael in the basement memory, and obviously Golden Freddy is present in the attic memory, but he's nowhere else, right? And that's not exactly true, because if you pay close attention, you can actually find Golden Freddy in each memory. In order to find Golden Freddy in each memory, you would pretty much have to follow the right steps at the right time, and if you end up finding him, you get a secret newspaper. So for example, the bedroom memory. If you stare at the bedroom curtains for around 30 seconds at the beginning of the memory, and then open them, you'll find Golden Freddy in the window, and that leads to a secret newspaper clipping. So the first secret newspaper is really more of a reference to Scott's nightmares that he had apparently about Five Nights at Freddy's. I believe it was referencing Bonnie specifically. The second secret newspaper highlighted the massive success of Five Nights at Freddy's. The third secret newspaper detailed a missing persons investigation turning up cold, leaving a family haunted. We know at the end, Michael possesses Scott, but the family realizes something is wrong. So maybe Michael, realizing this, has taken off, right? Leading to Scott's quote-unquote disappearance. We then have the fourth secret newspaper, which is about a suspected serial arsonist being responsible for several forest fires and is eventually taken into custody. Now, I have to imagine this is Michael as Scott, because who else would it be? Right? It's a very weird point, and we know that Michael, along with the other creation spirits, right, originated from the fire. But it could make sense that maybe Michael is trying to get new spirits to come into the real world somehow through these fires. Not really clear, but Michael is definitely the best candidate for this serial arsonist. And then we have what would be the final newspaper, which is actually a note to Nick from what I believe is Golden Freddy, telling him to come back to us. So Golden Freddy, I believe, is the one that lured Nick back to the family home. But not just with a note, right? Because you just get a note. Why is he going to go back? That's not all he did. Golden Freddy enticed Nick to come back using the memories that we see in the game. I mean, think about it. Nick has already said that he doesn't know what happened that night. He doesn't know the full story. That's why he's come back. But if you go through all the memories, you see that only the first memory in the bedroom belongs to Nick. All the other memories have to deal with Val, his mother, Scott, his father, and Michael. So how does he have this knowledge? How is that possible? Simply put, I believe Golden Freddy somehow put these memories into Nick's head to entice Nick to return home. Now, how do we know that Golden Freddy's the one that put these memories in Nick's head? In each memory, if you die, you get a scene, right, depending on which memory it is, and at the very end, you get the message, "Come back." Similar to how Golden Freddy sends messages to Michael in the basement memory with flashing text, this means that all of the memories that Nick has been remembering, everything that he's been seeing in his mind, they've all been messages from Golden Freddy in an attempt to get him to come back. But the question I have is, why? Golden Freddy has never really shown any intent to target Nick before. I mean, we know that the creations want to kill Scott because they needed to kill Scott in order to stay in the world, but this is decades after. What does Nick have anything to do with it anymore? Why Nick specifically? Not to mention, right, all this was not just to lure Nick, but to inevitably kill him, because as we see from the final newspaper clipping, it suggests heavily that Nick is the one who dies in his old country home, which was recently renovated, and a landlord found the body, Tobias. Not only that, but if you die in the attic, the death scene you get in the attic is actually a phone on the ground with Tobias calling and blood on the floor, suggesting that that is the moment that Nick dies. Not only that, but we also see Golden Freddy, what I assume to be Golden Freddy, during one of Nick's monologues. So that pretty much covers the weird, or rather vague, side story with Golden Freddy and Nick. So, once again, where does this leave everyone? We know Scott pretty much gave up his soul at the very least, and now Michael resides in Scott's body. Nick has died to Golden Freddy decades after the night that Five Nights at Freddy's ended. Val and the rest of her family are presumably somewhere else safe. We never really hear about them again after pretty much the end of the game. Tobias found Nick, and probably is gonna have to deal with a whole lot of trouble trying to sell that recently renovated country home. With regards to the creations, I think they're still alive. As we already know, Golden Freddy told Nick to come back, but he says, "Come back to us," indicating more than one creation being alive, which means that if Golden Freddy survived, it's very likely that the other creations are alive as well, probably residing in the house in some manner. The Fallen, stuck in their spiritual realm, forever wishing that they can one day make it to the physical world. And so that pretty much summarizes the end of the joy of creation. This was definitely a major doozy to get through. Honestly, this is probably the most complicated video I've done, and to be honest, a lot of that is on me, because I did not do this video the way that I normally do my story breakdown videos, and as a result, I pretty much made myself work even harder than I needed to, just to get everything nice and proper for this, right? We've pretty much covered the main story, right? And we've covered this weird side story with Nick and Golden Freddy, and that pretty much answers everything, though obviously there's a lot that is kind of hard to talk about. You know, why the creations can't kill Scott, why Golden Freddy wanted to kill Nick, what happened to Michael after possessing Scott, and the family realizing that Michael was, or not Michael necessarily, but they realized that Scott is not the same. Definitely a lot of questions left, but I hope that this at least brought some more clarity as to the story behind the joy of creation, because at the very least it did for me. Because even when I was playing the game, I don't think I ever even got a semblance of an idea about this weird side story about Golden Freddy bringing Nick over to the home, or rather Golden Freddy is the reason why the events of the game exist technically, right? Because again, we are Nick remembering everything, and that's only possible because of Golden Freddy. So it's a very interesting story overall, very unique from, you know, considering how it's about Scott, the creator of Five Nights at Freddy's, and it's very in-world in a way. I don't know, it's a really cool fan game story, and I can't wait to see what Nixon is able to do with the remake. Again, I don't even know if the remake will change the story that much or at all. I hope it does, because I would love to cover a new story with regards to the Joy of Creation, but also because I think there are definitely a lot of things that could be improved on with regards to the story, at least to help give some more clarity. But at the same time, maybe the mystery is kind of intended, you know, because at the same time, you don't really want a story to just answer everything for you and leaves you wanting nothing else. But of course, with all that said, I hope you did enjoy. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Lets me know you're enjoying the content and want to see more of it. That has been The Joy of Creation. The game's in the description below as always. Great job to Nixon, and I'm looking forward to the remake. And with that said, I'll see you in another video. Happy Halloween, and take care.